It's race morning, everybody. Good morning. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm about to load up my car so that we can head to the race. Get some coffee in me, a little bagel, a little banana, something like that, and we're gonna start racing. So let's load this car up. All right, what's up, everybody? So the race was this past weekend, and I'm making the video right now going over everything and how it all went. So I'm gonna do some narrating and show you some pictures and some videos, and we'll just kind of walk through it from start to finish. I didn't take my GoPro. Thankfully my wife and my sister were out there taking some pictures and filming for me, but I just kind of thought that with it being, you know, kind of my first race, that I just didn't want to dealing with the GoPro, having it strapped to my chest and then having to take it off, and you know, kind of all that stuff. So I didn't film it myself, but we do have some clips and some pictures that I'm going to show you. So we're going to also just kind of walk through everything. So with that being said, let's start the video. So the race started at about 7:15 in the morning. I ended up getting to the race venue at about 5:45, 5:50. I wanted to have plenty of time to set up all my stuff in transition, kind of get a lay of the land, learn from some of the other people that had been there before, and I'm really glad that I got there so early to get set up. I wasn't rushed. After I got set up, I was able to kind of take my time, drink a little bit of water, relax, do some breathing before the race started. So the race started with gathering everybody together on the beach of the lake, and the announcers kind of made some remarks about the race. So the announcers said their piece about the race, and then we got started, and the first wave that went out was my wave, the stand-up paddleboard group, as you can see by these pictures here. And it was a half-mile loop, so a quarter mile out and back, and which I think it was actually a little bit longer than a quarter mile, because I had done a bunch of quarter mile out and back loops as training, and this one appeared to be a little bit longer than that, but that was okay. My goal was to be in the front wave of the people. So overall there were about 300 race competitors, 30 of us on stand-up paddleboards, and my goal was to come out of the water in kind of the first wave of people in the stand-up paddleboard group, which I did. I was number 5 coming out of the water. I held on to the lead for a little while. The first kind of 500 yards or so, I was leading the pack in the stand-up paddleboard. A couple people got next to me, and we kind of went neck and neck until we made the turn, and then I got passed by a few people who were just absolutely crushing it on the paddleboard, and then we moved into transition 1, which I was the fastest person to transition. Now, because I wasn't the first person coming out of the water, I didn't leave the transition area first, but if you look at my time splits, I made the fastest first transition in that group. So I left transition 1 and I had gained back a position, maybe 2 positions or so, and got on the mountain bike. So on the mountain bike, we kind of started on this dirt road and made a big loop, and then hopped off onto the trail that the mountain bike course was on, and it was a 2-loop trail. So you went around once, cut back over, went around again, and then passed the turnaround spot and went back to transition. And on the first lap of the mountain bike, about a quarter of the way through, I felt terrible. I was just gassed. I could not get my heart rate under control. I had had terrible sleep the night before, only got a couple hours of sleep, so I think that that was partly responsible for why I wasn't as well rested as I should have been. And I think that I was just a little nervous about the race, and I just couldn't get my mind to shut off before I went to bed. But the first, quarter of the first lap or so, I just felt terrible. I got passed by 1 or 2 people, and then maintained my position pretty well throughout the rest of it. And by the second half of the second lap, I started to feel really good, and I was just flying. And the second part of the loop that you do is mostly downhill, which is kind of where I shine. And I just opened up the taps and fully sent it downhill. And I felt really good about that. And I got back into the transition zone. And from there, we moved on to the running portion. And during that second transition, it was a little bit slower than my first. I needed a second. You know, I grabbed a couple of massive gulps of water, kind of rinsed my mouth out, spit some of that water out, drank some more water, threw my running shoes on, and I actually brought with me my hip pack, my running hip belt, which has a water bottle. And I'm really glad that I did that. My coach kind of told me, don't worry about bringing hydration with you. There will be aid stations along the way. And boy, oh boy, was I glad I ignored his advice and brought my hip pack anyway, because the run was absolutely brutal. The run was, I think, just a touch over 5 miles, and the first 2 miles of it was essentially straight uphill. And you know, it's a trail run, so it's not only is it uphill, it's very undulating, a lot of switchbacks, and then obviously rocks all in the way of just normal walking. So I made it to the first aid station running, and then shortly after that is when it turns and goes straight up vertical. And I'll put some pictures in here of just kind of how steep it was, and show you how high up you actually go. I mean, I gotta think that you gain 800 to maybe 1,000 feet in vertical on the first portion of this run. And so every time I would come to a downhill, I would jog it, and then back to every uphill, I was kind of just speed walking because I was just absolutely gassed. So that was probably the most disappointing part of the race for me, was just having to kind of speed walk some of these sections in the run. And I got passed by probably 2 more people in my group at that point. And then the run plateaus, and you reach this kind of rolling flat section for about 3/4 of a mile. And I held on with this one guy. We were kind of running together for that flat section. And I was doing my best to kind of maintain a mid 160s heart rate and not, you know, fully let it out just yet, because we still had another 2.5 or so miles to go. And then the course turns back downhill and you start flying, which was a lot of fun. And you know, you're kind of playing hopscotch with all the rocks that are in your way, just moving around. And it felt good to really open up the taps fully and get there. And then the downhill section ends, and it's another kind of rolling flat section all the way into the finish. And at the end of the downhill section, they have another aid station. But man, that water that I brought with me totally saved my life on that uphill. I don't think I would have been able to finish the run at the speed in which I did. And then you come back onto the dirt road where kind of all the main stuff is happening, and you run through the parking lot and you make a turn and run down this little hill, and boom, you're across the line. You are a triathlon finisher at that point. And I just felt extremely proud of myself and all the work that I put in. My total time was 2 hours and 28 minutes, and that was for a half-mile stand-up paddleboard, a little over 13 miles on the mountain bike, and then about a little over 5 miles on the run. So it was about 18.5 to 19 miles total of movement. So I'm very, very proud of that. I ended up placing 7th in my group and then 3rd place in my category. So it was, all in all, it was a good experience. I had an absolute blast doing it, even though I felt super gassed a lot of the time and I was struggling. But overall, I had a really, really good time. I'm really happy that I took on this challenge to see what I can do. And overall, I think that, you know, I would completely recommend it for anybody looking to challenge themselves regardless of what type of race it is, I think you should take on doing a race, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, a triathlon, a half marathon, a full marathon, whatever it is that you kind of are maybe interested in trying, I would say go for it, because it was just so much fun. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this race recap, and thank you everybody for your support along the way. Thank you to my amazing wife, my family, my friends that supported me, my coach. Everything was great. The triathlon community is super awesome. I loved meeting a bunch of people there. Everybody was very nice and friendly. Everyone was stoked for each other. You know, every time you passed somebody or got past, people would give you words of encouragement, and it was just such a fun event overall. So thank you everybody for tuning into this series. I'm not sure what's going to be next. May you want to try and squeeze in a half marathon before the end of the summer. We'll see. But yeah, this has just been such an awesome journey to go on. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.